kidding. What you are reading in these texts, especially in chapter 4, the ones that you guys study just now, I hope you grasp the magnitude of this text. Can you guys hear me in the back? I really hope you can grasp the magnitude of this text, because if you would consider yourself a Christian, what this text is telling you is that it's a miracle that you have your mind changed and your heart's changed from what it used to be. If you would say that you're here and you're not yet a Christian, you have to also recognize that it'll take a miracle for you to actually come to believe in God. And the odds are really, really against you. So what we're reading in these 12 or so verses is nothing short of a really, really crazy miracle. And when someone says that I'm a Christian, it just kind of comes off as like it's a normal thing, right? Some of you guys last year came to faith, meaning you came to believe in Christ. You came to know and believe and trust in Him. If that's true of you, and if that's what you would say is true of yourself, you have to understand that what this text is telling you is that is not a light thing. Some of us think that our testimonies are really boring, and it's like, oh, my testimony's not like that guy's or this guy's. But what you have to see, this text is saying in the spiritual realm, in your heart, something really, really crazy had to happen for you to be able to even believe in God, or even be able to side with God, or even be able to love God. It's not something small, okay? So we're going to go through these reels real quick. I hope that you guys will grasp it, okay? Our first question is, what is the first imperative or the first command that we read in these verses, and what do you think it means? What would you guys say? Yes, Abby.
To stop walking like how the Gentiles is, and to live a new life and new identity in Christ.
To stop walking like the Gentiles do and to live in new life. But hold up, I have a question. Right before this, Paul is talking about all these things about Gentiles, Jews, that's no more, there's no racial barriers. But why does this question sound like he's saying like, yo, don't be like those Gentiles? Why does it sound like that? Because Paul just talked about Gentiles are united to Christ and there is no hatred between Gentiles. So why is Paul saying like, okay, you Gentiles, don't walk like, what do you think he means by Gentiles? Yeah, I saw Finley's hand.
In this case, that referring, I feel like he's not referring to Gentiles as in like a people group racially, but like people who don't believe in the Lord.
That's it. Is that what are you doing that, Jonathan? Because you're like, she's right? That's a great answer, and that's the true answer. In this case, a few verses back, Paul has said he's called them Gentiles because they are Gentiles. Gentile is anyone that's not Jewish, right? But in this case, what he's saying is, remember, before you came to Christ, you lived like people that were separated from God, which back in the day, the Jewish people were God's people, Gentiles were not. So what he's saying is, Gentiles are people that are not believers, right? So it's not the racially charged term that we think it is in this case. All right, so that's the right answer, Abby. What does that mean to not walk like Gentiles? What does that even mean? Okay, don't walk like the Gentiles do, okay? I'll go with Elise.
You must no longer live or think like a non-Christian.
You must no longer live or think like a non-Christian, okay? Is there anything deeper than that? That's true, that's right. And that's what it is saying. But is there anything deeper than that? Because that just seems so like, don't do that, don't do this, right? I think it goes a little deeper than that. What do you think, Justin?
I think the thing about the Gentiles was they had a hardened heart, so he uses kind of like, he describes them as callous.
Okay.
To be like kind of hardened to it.
Okay.
And he says because of this they started to practice impurity and sensuality. So I think he calls us to soften our hearts and to draw closer to him.
Okay. He's calling us to soften our hearts to draw closer to him. That's true. That's an ongoing process. Okay. Yes, Abby?
To desire to be closer to him and then put on the new robes and take off the old robes.
Okay, to desire to be closer to him, to put... These are things that I feel like it's telling me I gotta do something. I gotta do something. That's true. There is a sense where we do have to practice our faith, right? But is that what Paul is kind of getting at when he's saying, no, you should no longer walk like the Gentiles do? What is he getting at here? There's something a little deeper than this. Yeah, Jonathan?
Your worldview has to change.
That's it, right? Your worldview, it doesn't have to change. It's changed. What Paul is saying is you are no longer rejecting God. Something happened in your heart Before God intervened and changed your heart was hard. You hated God, you rejected God, and you're walking in the ways of not God. But something happened where your heart was changed to turn and be like, oh my goodness, this is the God who made me. He knows me, he loves me, and he actually commands things that are good for me. I want to walk towards that way. Something crazy happened for you to be going this way, be like, yo, that God, what God? No God. Forget it. I want to do my own thing. I'm my own God. I'm my own captain. Something happened in your heart for you to change to be like, this is God. He made me. He loves me. Right? That's who you are. Your worldview changed. When God intervened and changed your heart and softened it, you had new life. Your heart was turned inside out and it changed. Okay? So when he's saying no longer walk as the Gentiles do, he's just saying be who you are now. Don't you see what happened? You were walking this way, you hated God, but now something's changed. And yes, you're not perfectly loving God, but your heart is now postured to want to be inclined to know God and want to love God. So be that. Be that. Okay? Okay. Second question. Flick. Verses 18 through 19, Paul describes the life of the Ephesians before they came to believe in Jesus. These verses also reveal a lot about the human condition. What are we learning about the human condition of the heart? Yeah, Finley. We are calloused and we have hard hearts, okay? That's true, and that's what we're going to get to, all right? But for the sake of time, let me quickly go through these steps, okay? There is an order to which Paul is talking about here, okay? It begins with this hardness of heart. The hardness of heart means that your heart, when your heart is hard, your heart is your emotion factory, your center of your being. It's what we said last time. I think Marco said it's where your moral decisions happen, and I think Cyrus said it's your will, or Uriah said that. I forget. Somebody said that, right? It's your will to do good or do bad, right? When you have a hard heart, you have absolutely nothing penetrating that and affecting that to change that view. Your heart is hard. You're set in your ways. You hate God. You don't want him. You're walking this way. What God? I don't know God. I'm walking my own way. That hardness of heart leads to this ignorance. When you have no ability and no desire to want to know God and why that's important and why you think he should have say in your life, you're ignorant to the ways that he's designed the world. You're ignorant to the ways that he's designed you. You're ignorant to what's true. And when you're ignorant, your understanding of how the world works, why things God has designed is the way that they are, they're darkened. It's clouded. You're alienated because you don't want God. So alienation, it's two ways. You're alienated from God because you don't want God, so you're walking away from him. That's what being an alien means. It's a stranger, it's a foreigner, right? But also at the same time, as a holy God, when someone is walking away and rejecting him and in sin, in his justice, he's going to give them up to what they want, which is a life apart from him. So he's alienating himself from you too. Over time, it's a negative feedback. So the more you reject God, the more you neglect God, the more your heart gets hardened. It's kind of like, who works out here? You guys work out? Let me see those calluses, James. You got calluses on your hand?
Got a couple.
Hey, he does. Okay. Anybody else? Anyone else? All right, now you guys don't want to show me calluses? Okay. Gymnast doing the bars, going up and down, doing that. You got calluses, right? Over time, when you first did those gymnastics workouts, my guess is that it hurt a lot. You got blisters. But now, as a professional gymnast, you don't get blisters anymore, right? Or you might, but it doesn't happen as often, right? Your hands become callous. James plays the guitar. Songa plays the guitar. If you've played guitar long enough, my mom's calling. If you play guitar long enough, you have calluses on your hand. Over time, where's James? Is James here? I remember when you first played guitar, your hands hurt, and you kept talking about that, right? But now you don't complain about that anymore because you don't feel that pain anymore. Your hands callous. Sometimes calluses are good. In this case, calluses are bad. The more you reject God, the more you want to reject God. The more you want to reject God, the more you want to reject God. And it gets worse and worse. You get calloused. Your heart gets more and more hardened. That leads you to give up into these sensual desires, which are all against God. And it leads you to be greedy, to practice every kind of impurity. What does that mean to be greedy to practice every kind of impurity? That's crazy. You think professional gymnast is crazy? That's crazy. It means that you're greedy. Like, think about someone that's greedy, right? You guys know someone that whenever there's some snacks, they want to take all the snacks. Yeah, Aaron, yeah. It's all right. Sometimes it's all fun and games. It's fun, okay? But being greedy, think of it like that. You're collecting. All right, guys, bring it back here. You're collecting for yourself these sinful tendencies, and you don't give a rip about the consequences. And you're like, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. This is mine, this is mine. And furthermore, what happens when you practice hockey? You get better at it, right? You're practicing every kind of impurity. That means that your heart is so bent on doing the things that are opposed to God that you're actually living a life where you're practicing things that are sinful. Like, you're doing these things to get better at it. That's crazy. That's what it's saying is the condition of the human heart before God intervenes and changes that and upends it. All right? We got 2 minutes. We got to go quick. Okay. Scroll, yes. Verses 20, 21. What are the three, what's the life-changing factor? This is probably the most important thing that you need to know. What's the life-changing factor here? How were the Ephesians saved? How are you saved? Yeah, Uriah. Jesus. Okay, tell me more about Jesus. Okay, he gives us grace and saves us, okay? That's true. There's two things that are distinct about this text. First, we learned that the Ephesians learned Jesus. What does it mean to learn Justin? What does it mean if I'm saying I'm learning Justin? What does that mean? I'm getting to know him. I'm not just getting to know facts about Justin, but I'm going to take him out to lunch. We're going to eat some punch on chicken. I know what he likes to order at punch on chicken, okay? All right? The combo, yeah? Because I'm learning Justin. I want to get to know him. When you're learning Christ, you're not just learning facts about him. You're spending time with him to learn him. I'm learning Justin. Yeah, these are things that he likes, but these are things that I've witnessed him liking. When you learn Christ, you're becoming more in tune with him. You're relating to him in a way that you're becoming more and more inclined to believe in who he says he is. The second thing that happens that led to the salvation of the Ephesians is God intervened. Remember, you had this walk, you were rejecting God, you hated him, you have nothing to do with him, you care less. But God, being rich in mercy, in his great love for those which he loved, made the Ephesians alive together with Christ. By grace, God saved the Ephesians. It's by God's grace. He went into that heart, he softened it, he gave it revelation, he gave him light so that they would come to know. So if you are here a Christian today, yeah, you may think that one day it just made sense for you, but what you have to realize that deep down inside, God did a work in your heart through those years and years and years of teaching that your parents taught you, or the years and years you're sitting in church. One day it just made sense. I need this God. One day it clicked for you, right? Some of you guys, I've talked to you guys this past couple months. You don't know when, but it just happened where you think, you know what? I was walking this way and I was rejecting God, but all of a sudden I'm actually more inclined to want to walk this way. God saved you. God's changed your heart. And that's a miracle. Okay. Oh my goodness, it's 9:30. Let's flick. We're gonna flick 2 times, okay? We're gonna go to the applications, all right?
Tell us the three.
The 3 things, okay, the 3 things are you put off your old self, which we're gonna talk about. You you have to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and then you have to put on the new self made in the image of God. All right. What does that mean? Here we go. No. Here we're gonna go to the applications. This is it's gonna help you. All right. I'm sorry, guys. We're going a little beyond time, but please bear with me. This part is really, really important. So here are some applications that we can grab from this text. Okay. So first, I want to talk to those of you guys that would say that you are Christian. Maybe you're still kind of like, I'm still new to this, but at the very least, I know my heart has changed, and I want to believe in this God. If that's you, then there's a good chance that God has done a work in your heart, that you must or you might be believing in the Lord. If this is you, you have to remember who you were. Ephesians 17 through 19 is a description of your old self. You were ignorant of God, but now you're not. You were rejecting him and in darkness, but now you're not. It doesn't mean that you're perfectly doing this, but remember, that's where you came from. The second thing that you have to remember is remember what God has done in your heart. And maybe this is something that you're not aware of and you weren't attuned to until today, but remember that God has done something crazy in your heart to actually get you to go from going this way and hating him to actually wanting to love him and loving him. God has revealed to you the need for Jesus Christ, and that has changed you to want to actually believe in Jesus Christ. And that's nothing short of a miracle. Remember that. Okay, the third thing is remember who you are now. This is who you are. The Bible always talks about being Christian or being saved as a present thing, but also an ongoing thing, right? There's so much analogies that the text has. I want to just share with you a few things, right? You have this new walk now. Before, you walked in the ways of the Gentiles. Before, you walked in the ways of the world. You walked in your sin, and you could give a rip about God. But now you have this new walk. You're learning. We just talked to Lillian, right? Lillian got surgery, and I told you there's going to be a good analogy for this, right? She was telling me that, if you haven't noticed, she's off her wheelchair now, and she's learning to walk again, right? Yes, we could clap for that. Lillian obviously has a desire to walk, and she wants to get out of this thing, the walker, right? And she's having to learn again to walk. It's not going to be perfect at first, but her heart is bent on walking. When God has changed your heart, you have a new walk. One day you're walking this way comfortably, but now all of a sudden, yes, you're still stumbling, and you're still bumbling, but you want to walk in these ways. That's indicative of a changed heart. Nothing short of a miracle, okay? Another imagery is you have a new life. The old life, that's the old you. There's times where you might have tendencies to go back to that old you, but now you have this new life that says, no, this is the way I want to go. It's not always easy, but that's the way I want to go, okay? Another and last analogy that he gives is a new heart. You've been given, this heart of stone has been ripped out and been revitalized and put back into you, and now it's pumping, and it wants to follow the Lord, okay? Lastly, remember who you are becoming. I love this analogy that Pastor Rob gave this past Sunday, and he said that those of you guys that have transitioned from middle school to high school, you became a ninth grader after 8th grade ended. Summertime passed, you had your summer reading, and you became a ninth grader. You're a freshman, you're a high schooler now, right? But you're still kind of having to figure out what it looks like to be a freshman as you are a freshman. You already are one, but you're growing to become one as the year goes on. Before you know it, you're a 10th grader, right? That's the same thing with our walk with the Lord. When you turn away, when God changes your heart to become a Christian, you are a Christian. When you have come to believe that Christ died for your sin and you need him to save you from your sin, it means that you believe in him. When you have come to see and taste that the Lord is good, you become a Christian. But there is also a sense where there's this ongoing growth where you're growing and becoming more like Christ. That's a lifetime of happening, all right? Lastly, I want to speak a little bit to those that have not yet trusted in the Lord. Maybe you're here and you're thinking like, I could care less about this God that you're talking about. And if that's you, I'd rather you be honest with that and let's dialogue about it, because I don't want you to believe in something that you really don't believe. That's not the point of these texts, right? But the description that Ephesians chapter 4, 17 through 19 is talking about, it's a serious diagnosis of your condition. It's a serious diagnosis of the condition of all of our hearts before God and Christ has intervened. What we need to understand is that there's only one solution to fix this condition of our hearts. And the temptation for us is to think that I just need to become a good person, right? If you look at all these street evangelists and talk about how do you know you're going to get to heaven, they always say something along the lines of, I know I'm good enough. I do good enough things, right? That's not what gets you to heaven, or that's not what gets you accepted by God. But that's our temptation. What you need is you need a heart change. You need a new way of living. You need a new life. And the issue isn't necessarily that you aren't a good enough person, again, and that you're not doing good enough things. Again, it's your heart. It's not a matter of intellectual logic either. Sometimes some of you think, I just need to know more about God and then I'll become a believer. Or I just need this answer fixed and then I'll come to believe in God. No, at the core of you not being a Christian is you are rejecting God. It may not seem like you hate God. You may even think like, oh, God is kind of nice. But you're rejecting him. That's what it means to not believe in the Lord. You're rejecting a God that's created you, the one who knows you and the one who's made you and he loves you. And you know what happens if you go on rejecting him and rejecting him and rejecting him? Do you know what happens? You get what you want. If you go on living your life walking away from the Lord, caring less about who this God is, maybe not even thinking about him a single second of your life, you get what you want. You get an eternal life of separation from God's good grace. God will give you up to that. But that's not where you want to be. I don't want you to be separated from God's favorable presence, and I don't want you to face the full-blown justice that he has on sin. So here's my thing that application for you, and one thing to consider, one thing to do. Maybe you want to believe, maybe you don't, but I plead with you that you would actually just pray, that you would pray and ask God to intervene and change your heart. Think about these things intently and don't just believe it and don't just be scared into thinking about these things. I'm not just trying to scare you, right? Consider what Paul is saying about what a heart looks like and ask yourself, wow, is this true of me? Am I like this? And if you think it is and you think you need something to save you from that, I would say pray and plead that God would open your eyes and soften your heart to see the beauty of who he is, and that he would change you and pluck you out of that way and make you go in this way. At the very least, I want you to consider the seriousness of these things. It's not fun to talk about these heavy things, but it's necessary if it's true. If none of this is true, then it doesn't matter what I'm saying. You're just all here. We're gathered for a religious event, and nothing I say really matters. But I believe this is true. I want you to believe it too, but I want you to believe it because you really believe it and you see Jesus and God for who he is. So I plead with you that you would actually consider these things and then pray and ask God to change your heart. All right, guys? With that said, sorry, we've kept you guys for a lot longer. But let me close